over time you can completely change your life. So don't for a second ever think that you're not worthy of that change, that you're not worthy of a good life. You can make it happen. Good morning, I'm Fabi Marti. Today I want to talk to you guys about what it's like to be morbidly obese. Now, you might be like,
well, Fabi, you're still morbidly obese. What are you even talking about?
And that's the thing is, I'm still technically obese or whatever, but I've dropped 65.7 pounds as of this video, as of today actually. And I've done that over the last 5 months. I started at 371.4 pounds, on my way to 400 pounds, and now I'm at 305.7. So that puts me at like a little bit past my halfway point. As far as my weight loss, I'm working on losing 120 pounds initially. After that, I might try to lose a little bit more, but I think that's an attainable goal. And it should get me roughly around to about 20% body fat. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about this because I know from the outside looking in, it's very hard for people to put themselves in the shoes of somebody who's on the bigger side. A lot of people don't understand because they've never been that, you know? I just kind of want to share with people what it's like and maybe try to open up that discussion for people to be able to understand that it's a significant struggle, especially if you've gotten to a certain point. More than anything, morbid obesity, in my opinion, it's a symptom of something else. Usually a symptom of some unprocessed emotion, unprocessed situation. Not always, but generally that's what would lead somebody to just say F it. I just kind of want to share this with you guys. And if you've ever been in that boat, if you've ever dealt with morbid obesity, or if you're dealing with morbid obesity and you're like, man, I don't know what to do. I just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just feels like nothing I do works. I just want to say that I'm here for you, okay? And if you have any questions, you can just hit me up down below, post a comment. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. But the main thing that you have to focus on is just calorie deficit, and make sure you eat enough protein. Make sure you're getting enough nutrients. You don't want to completely starve yourself. So before I even started really getting up there, because I mean, I'm big now, and I'm roughly the size I was when things started to escalate gradually worse and worse. So the first thing that I noticed was that you don't sleep very well. You sleep for maybe 12 hours and it feels like you didn't get enough sleep. And that's actually a thing called sleep apnea. If you're not sleeping very well, but you're sleeping for a very long time, that's to say if your quality of sleep isn't that good, but you're in bed for hours on end, then more than likely you have sleep apnea. Especially if you have a thicker neck, you more than likely have sleep apnea. That means that you're not breathing at certain points during your sleep cycle, and that's causing you to stop and then kind of wake up and start breathing again, and it caused for basically an unrestful night. So night after night you think you're getting a ton of sleep and you're not understanding what's going on, and you're just gaining more and more weight. And you know, sleep apnea is one of those contributing factors. So the second thing is that when you're bending over to like do things, so like washing dishes, I wash my dishes by hand, your lower back hurts a lot because you're carrying around a sizable belly. You know, it's a big strain on your back. So you know, just moving around and being slightly bent over, not even all the way bent over, just slightly bent over to like move things over, that's going to mess with your back. So that's like the one thing that I absolutely hated was all the lower back pain. Fortunately, I think I'm past that point, so I feel really good. One of those things that really started to affect me, like once I started getting bigger and bigger, upwards of like 350 pounds, 365 pounds, 371 pounds, whatever, was tying my shoe. I mean, and it's not, you know, it's one of those things where like if I got down to like bend over and start tying my shoe, by the time I'd get back up, I'd have to try to rush through it because by the time I'd get back up, I'd feel like I was dying. I was running out of air, and you know, I'd be trying to catch my breath like I just got done running very hard for like the last 10 minutes, you know. So one of those things that kind of puts things into perspective, once you get bigger, you know, a lot of the times you don't realize it up until you're in inconvenient situations. So like if you're in a cramped elevator and everybody's looking at you because you're the big fat ass taking over, the most space. Maybe people aren't really looking at you, but that's how you feel. It's like you feel like you're an inconvenience to the world, like you're just there, and like you're this big mass that no one wants to be around. And it really messes with your brain, because you're like, man, nobody even cares about me. I'm here by myself, and every time I'm anywhere where space is an issue, everybody automatically looks at me. And I know I'm projecting a little bit, but it's one of those insecurities that I'm pretty sure other people that were that are bigger or have been bigger experienced as well. Because I mean, it's, to an extent, it is a little bit true. People will look at you because you're like, oh my god, that guy's huge, he's occupying all the space, man, that fat ass. Excuse me. I had a situation on a plane that wasn't very pleasant. A lady absolutely refused to sit next to me because I was so big. At one point in time. Right now I find it kind of comical, but it did kind of hurt my feelings at the time. And I even stopped flying coach after that. I started flying first class so that I could, have a little bit more space and not feel as subconscious. But that's like a really big thing, is like, say there's like a little space between a couple people and you have to get by. It kind of feels like you're a really big inconvenience, especially asking those people like, hey, do you guys mind moving so I can scooch on by? Even though like now that I'm a little bit smaller, I'm like, it's no biggie, just like, excuse me, pardon me, But at the time I was like, man, I just felt really bad about myself, especially, just asking people to inconvenience themselves by asking them to move a little bit, So like some things that I kind of noticed as time progressed, and I didn't really notice them initially because, well, I stopped going out to restaurants as much. I stopped, putting myself in public situations a lot, and just when I wasn't at work, I spent most of my time in bed, and when I was at work, I spent most of my time in a car. So, or I was out walking out and about. I never really, sat down and in close proximity to other people like that. So like the size of things, it really begins to affect you. It's like nothing is your size anymore. And the thing is, like, arms with chairs, the arms will dig right into your sides, and it's very painful. And a lot of times, there's no other seats. You just kind of have to deal with it. One of the most uncomfortable things, and I think I was actually a little bit over 371.4 pounds, was when I was in New York City right before I started my new job, and then eventually my new, health journey. Was I went to go see the Book of Mormon, and it's a Broadway theater, so like the seats are smaller. I say smaller because to me they were tiny at the time, and I think right now I might be able to fit somewhat better, but at that time I had to kind of contort myself for, I don't know, the 2-3 hours that show lasted. And it wasn't very pleasant, but I did enjoy the show. But that's one thing, is like arms with chairs hurt. Another thing is, like, when you go to a restaurant, if you sit at a booth, good luck, you might get stuck in there. You don't really fit in booths very well. One of those things that I'm thinking about right now is like when you're in an airplane. So when I flew first class to New York City, back in March, and so like, but it was on a smaller plane, so they didn't have the tray table or whatever come down or whatever right on the seat back in front of you. They had the little thing that came out of the arm. And so, like, trying to set it down above my legs, that was pretty much impossible. It did not seat properly. And, like, it was kind of cockeyed like this because of my legs. They were so chunky. And, the stewardess, I'm trying to grab the drink from, the flight attendant. And, the flight attendant is trying to stick it on the tray. And I'm like, dude, it's going to fall, But just like things like that you don't really think about until you're in those situations, things are a lot smaller than you remember, especially if you haven't done them in a while. So right before my trip to New York City, I went clothes shopping. And this was my first time clothes shopping in a long time, mostly because I wore my uniform clothes in my former line of work, and they were pretty big. And then on top of that, when I wasn't at work, I just wore a t-shirt and basketball shorts most of the time. And so, basketball shorts stretch, and I didn't really feel the need to get new clothes. But I really got to that point where I needed new clothes, even though like my shorts were like a 2X or whatever. And so I did end up buying more basketball shirts and t-shirts, but I also bought a few, like dress casual clothing, some jeans and some polos and stuff like that. I had to go to the big and tall section, and I had never been to the big and tall section in my life. That might sound impossible to you, but like especially online with online shopping and all of that, I hadn't been to an actual physical store in years. And so like the main thing was like I felt very uncomfortable going to the big and tall section, and then I had to figure out my size. So I'm like, well, and at the time I picked 4X as my size, that here I am wearing these oversized 4X shirts, and they're fitting pretty snugly on me, and it's just like, well, I spent like $500 on brand new clothes, and had I known that I was going to start losing weight, soon after that, I probably wouldn't have bought as much clothes. But I honestly, at that point in time, I had accepted it as my fate that I was just going to be big for the rest of my life, and that I couldn't really do anything about it anymore. One of the things that I used as a crutch a lot was that I have hypothyroidism. And so, I was like, well, I tried losing weight before, because I did work out. I worked out religiously for like 3 months back in 2019. Kind of a funny story. There's this girl that I really like, and, I was trying to get in shape for her, which is completely the wrong thing. Should never do that. You should do it for you. You should do it for where you want your life to be at eventually. But you shouldn't ever do it for somebody else. That's not to say that it can't help as a little motivator, but the reason why it didn't work out for me back then was because I lifted weights and did a little bit of elliptical work every single day. But I didn't watch what I ate. I still went to all the greasy spoons that we would go to on patrol at the old job, and especially with the other guys, it just kind of seems normal. You eat junk food every day, especially if you don't pack your lunch. You forget to pack your lunch. But it's one of those things where it's like, you just kind of end up, being bigger than you really thought you were. Some people, and that's a subjective thing. Like a lot of times people have body dysmorphia one way or the other. For me, a lot of the time, I felt like I was actually smaller than what I was. And then once I got to be big in certain situations and big enough, I felt like I was way larger than I was. So that can play tricks on you. It's definitely a good reason to see a therapist, just so they can help you work through all the self-sabotage and all the little situations that you never really learn to deal with properly. Some people are afraid of being judged, but a therapist, I can tell you from my own personal experience, a therapist is like a coach. They will be there for you. They will help you along. They won't judge you. They just give it a shot. And sometimes you have to go through a little trial and error to find somebody that you really click with. But when you find a therapist that works for you, I mean, it's night and day. I'm not saying that you'll be on cloud 9 24/7, but you'll feel so much better, and you won't end up spiraling down into things as much as you normally would. Sorry, I'm gonna get off my soapbox really quick. I know I kind of went on a completely other tangent on that. So yeah, buying bigger clothes is a struggle, because you have to go to a big and tall section or a big and tall store, which overcharges on a lot of clothing. I'm not saying that you can't find good clothing at a decent price, but it gets more and more expensive. I found things on sale, and I still spent like $500 on clothing. And it wasn't a ton of clothes. It's maybe 4 or 5 pairs of jeans, 5 or 6 polo shirts, and maybe 5 or 6 t-shirts. That was it. Another thing that's a real struggle is just doing basic physical activities, where it's going up and down a flight of stairs, especially going down a flight of stairs. It hurts your knees so bad. My God, I can't tell you how bad my knees used to hurt. The house that I'm at right now, the laundry room is in the basement. So, I have to go down the stairs, and at first I was like, man, these stairs are really terrible, really, and which they are terrible stairs. They're a lot steeper than what normal stairs would be like, but still, that was only a slight issue. The main issue was that I was just too heavy for my body at the time. Another thing about being morbidly obese is that normal or smaller people don't understand what it's like. And I'm not saying that to say that people are insensitive or anything like that. It's nothing that they've ever experienced. So they don't understand, all the little things that affect you, especially like when I was at my biggest. I mean, just going into social situations felt so terrible. I hated them. I try to avoid them. I'm still not very social. Part of that, has to do with the obesity side, not so much nowadays, but a good part of that also has to do with my former line of work. For those of you that don't know, I was a patrol officer for a security department for a public school district, inner city public school district. So my mindset, my mentality, especially in crowded places, is a little different than the average Joe. But the main thing that I was trying to say with that is just people don't understand what it's like, and it's like, well, you put yourself in that predicament, but the thing is a lot of the times people that get to that point, they cognitively, they usually understand, yeah, I'm doing something wrong, but it's so much more complex than that, because you don't really fully understand why it is that you have those patterns that are allowing you to get into that. And a lot of times, bigger people, including myself, we make excuses like, oh, well, I don't like eating healthy. I don't, and I honestly, I don't like eating healthy to this day. I don't like eating salads and stuff like that. And that's the thing, is you don't have to force yourself to eat a bunch of crummy foods that you don't like. You got to figure out what works for you. One easy, simple thing that you can do is go online, go on Google, and Google the foods that you like. And say you like pizza, right? And Google something like protein pizza, or anabolic pizza, or bodybuilding pizza, or diet pizza. And it'll give you a recipe for how to make something that's high in protein, maybe even high in volume. And it'll fill you up, and you'll enjoy it because it's something that you actually like to eat. So this next one is a little funny to me, but at the time it was it made me feel very subconscious about things, and so being over 300 pounds, and especially over 350 pounds, you have to start worrying about weight limits on things. Whereas maybe somebody can recline against something, or maybe somebody can go up a certain ladder or stairs or whatever, you have to be mindful of the weight limits on things. And for me, I had to be mindful of the weight limits on an elliptical. Like at first starting out, I didn't even think I had it in me to use the elliptical. Even though in the past, when I was in much better shape, I used to use the elliptical. It's one of my favorite cardio exercises. And it's one of those things where once I started getting down to that size, I started getting under 350 pounds, I was like, okay, well, I can try to use the elliptical a little bit, and I did use it quite a bit. I was using it at one point in time for a whole hour. I'd get in about 4.5 miles 3 times a week. But so that's one thing, like especially at my current line of work, you have to be mindful of like the step ladders and stuff like that you use. I work in pharmaceuticals now, and so like things have weight limits on them. You don't want to sit on something or stand on something that's not going to be able to hold your body up. And so like a lot of times, especially like when I was in the low 200s, I never really worried about that. There was maybe 1 or 2 things that I wanted to try, but I couldn't because I was over 200 pounds. And it's okay, but whatever. But definitely as you get higher and higher up the scale, it's a challenge to do certain things, and more importantly, it's kind of a danger to do certain things. So this next part that I want to talk about is kind of more on the emotional side. A lot of times you feel trapped. A lot of times you feel hopeless, like you're never going to be able to get back in shape, or you're never going to be able to be healthy and do a lot of things that you used to do and that you used to love to do. And you might even feel like, well, maybe you deserve this. I want to tell you, looking dead in your eyes, that if you're dealing with this right now, you don't deserve this. You deserve much better, and you can make it. You can make a difference in your own life. You can get healthy again. I'm living proof of it. Yeah, I'm still over 300 pounds. I'm 305.7 pounds. But you know what? I've got tons more energy. I've got a loving and appreciation for life. My libido's through the roof. that's one of those things that makes me a little to say, but it's God honest, you know, like I'm so excited about life a lot more than I was at that point in life. And I just want to tell you that you can do it, okay? I started off by lifting weights, light weights, because I hadn't lifted in forever. And I started off by walking at a park because I didn't even feel comfortable going to a gym. Over time, you can make that difference in your life. Over time, you can completely change your life. So don't for a second ever think that you're not worthy of that change, that you're not worthy of a good life. You can make it happen. So one thing that I didn't fully understand, and I think other people that have gotten bigger might not understand, is that you are not capable of doing a lot of the things that you used to. And I noticed over the years that I worked at the school district, we used to have our firearms training. We had tactical firearms training. So, you know, you're down on one knee, you're down on the other knee, you're shooting from behind cover, on the move, and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that I noticed was, and I thought it was, honestly, I wrote it off in my head as it just being, I had an ingrown nail, which I kind of did, but I think that was like mostly due to the inflammation in my foot. You know, my feet had gotten fatter. Getting up and down from one knee was so much more difficult. And on top of that, you know, doing other things that I really enjoyed doing, like exploring new places. Yeah, I could still do it, but I had to be kind of cautious, and I had to give myself a little bit more time. And if I was doing something over a few days, I might have to take a day or two of rest because I just couldn't keep up with my old self. I couldn't keep up and do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. You know, I still wanted to go out and explore other places, but I had to take some rest because my hip would hurt, or my knees would hurt, or my ankles, and all kinds of stuff like that. So I want to share this video with you guys because I want to humanize being big. And by that I don't mean I want to say that, you know, we have to accept being fat, which, you know, to an extent I agree with that. You shouldn't judge somebody based off how big they are. You don't know the struggle that they have in their lives. But at the same time, you shouldn't accept it as healthy. It's not healthy to be so big that you can't do a lot of things. And I don't say that to put anybody down. I'm just saying it as a basic human fact. You're shortening your life, and I didn't realize it until it was almost too late for me. So I want to try to bring that awareness not only to people who don't know what it's like to be big, but to those people who are struggling with being big, that, you know what, this is a struggle, but you can make that change, and you can do it one meal at a time and one step at a time.